Okay, we have quorum. Councilor Letterman has now joined us. I'm going to introduce myself as, once again, I'm Melvin Edwards, Chairman of the Planning and Economic Development Committee. If everybody could just go around, starting in the corner with Ms. Pham, if you could just introduce yourself and your title, and we just walk around, and then we'll get started. We'll try to be as informal as we can and just be efficient with the use of the time as well.
Sure. I'm Amanda Pham, Executive Director of the Springfield Redevelopment Authority.
Hello, Tim Brangle, Chicago Consultant Studio. Have been involved over the last few years, Master Development Plan, and now helping implement economic development for the city.
Thank you.
Greg.
Go ahead, Greg.
Greg Farm, Organic Market from Springfield, Massachusetts.
Mr. Jablonski and your client. If you'd like to...
Good afternoon, Stephen Jablonski, architect, and Donald Mitchell of Renaissance Development.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Tim Sheehan, Chief Development Officer, City of Springfield.
Jeff Vassar, I'm a planner with the BSC Group, and I've been working with Tim and the Redevelopment Authority to pull together Amendment 12 to your Court Square Urban Renewal Plan.
Okay. Amanda, would you like to start us off, or Tim, either one?
Yeah, I don't mind. Thank you. Thanks again for the time and opportunity. As Jeff just stated, we're making some progress on the Court Square Urban Renewal Plan. We're looking at completing Amendment number 12. The plan was created back in 1970. So 50 years worth of redevelopment efforts downtown. And this amendment will be adding some of the planning initiatives that are surrounding two master plans that were created in this area. The master plan that came from the implementation blueprint that Tim Brangle had worked on, as well as this Northeast Downtown District area that we'll go into more detail on. So these are all of these strategies go to reinforce the authority's range of public action to address and change the environment and promote sound development, as well as supporting private development within this area specifically. Also, as part of Amendment 12, we're looking to do a consolidation effort on the plan in totality with 11 amendments. This should streamline the process and allow for redevelopment, as well as just streamline of the guidelines and the expectations within this plan area. Tim Sheehan, if you don't have anything else to add, I'd like to.
The only thing I would add is that when the Main Street and Convention Center District Master Plan was presented to the council, and both of the previous plans for the blast zone and the Main Street Convention District Plan, we indicated that the expectation was that they would ultimately be advancing into a more formalized urban renewal plan, and that is what has occurred, and that's what you'll be reviewing today. But both plans have been reviewed at the subcommittee level with the Economic Development Committee in its previous makeup, and the Main Street Convention District Master Plan was reviewed and approved by the Common Council as well. With that, Tim.
Great. Thank you, Tim and Amanda. And thank you for the opportunity to present. Yeah, it's nice to come back. We did present the Master Development Plan for the Main Street Convention Center District a little over a year ago. And since then as well, you've done the Northeast Downtown District Plan as well. And as Amanda said, I want just to give you a quick overview. This really is aligning and updating this urban renewal plan to be an effective tool for the SRA, but also to give direction to developers. And so we've now been trying to embody basically these plans into an Amendment 12, and as well as consolidate 50 years of a variety of amendments, 11 prior amendments, and streamline this into, again, a very effective tool for the developers and the SRA in the city. And so that's kind of our first task. Jeff's going to talk a little bit about the course, sort of the history on this, some of the key elements, and then Amendment 12 itself, some of the economic investment, the strategies behind it, some of the acquisition, and then talk about the amendment process. Just by way of, again, reminder from a little over a year ago, the master development plan focused on Main Street and Convention Center District was an outgrowth of the implementation blueprint and really focused in on that area around two of your biggest economic engines, Mass Mutual Center and MGM. And the plan began to identify opportunities, both for property, buildings and sites that were perhaps in need or also high priority in terms of reinforcing the plan, as well as public realm improvements. And you'll see when Jeff talks a little bit about urban renewal, it can actually help push both of those, not just private investment, but also public, to help bolster again the overall economic development potential in the area. So this is a necessary outgrowth, really, as Tim just said, taking this plan now and really embodying it into the urban renewal amendment, so that this becomes the guiding force for development in that area. Similarly, the Northeast Downtown District Master Plan focused really a lot on transit-oriented development, mixed-use development around near the blast zone and those opportunities. And again, so we basically have two areas of focus that Jeff will talk about that are additions or at least updates to the urban renewal plan. And with that, Jeff, why don't you talk a little bit more about the consolidation?
Thank you, Tim, and thank you for having us here today. So I'm just going to quickly walk you through what we're doing for the consolidated and Amendment 12 process, some of the reasons why we're doing this for the SRA, some of the benefits, and what will be coming up in the next couple of months to get this through the local approval process and onto the state. So first of all, as Amanda and Tim have both said, we are consolidating all of the still relevant and important elements from the original plan and the past 11 amendments into one document. This will help the SRA. It'll help the state Department of Housing and Community Development when certain actions that the SRA wants to take need to be run by DHCD as part of their role in urban renewal projects. It'll be very helpful to have all information in one document, easy to find. People don't have to go hunting through pages and pages and amendments to find the information you're looking for. So in addition to consolidating that prior information, we also are adding in new actions and new objectives and new priorities based on the two plans that Tim just mentioned, which I'll get into in a minute. The other thing that the plan does, the consolidation does, is it makes sure some of the prior actions that were approved for the SRA to undertake are reinforced and put out there so everybody understands, especially developers or anybody wanting to do work on their property within the urban renewal area. It reminds them what is expected of them to make this whole area improve for everybody within it, as well as the city, and that the redevelopment authority has certain obligations that were given to them years ago to look at different projects and what is going to be taking place within this area to make sure it is consistent with the larger vision for this area. Some of those prior controls were kind of buried in previous amendments, and we've been able to consolidate that and bring them forward. And we're doing all this in a format that is consistent with the most current regulations of the Commonwealth's Urban Renewal Program, which were established in 2018. They were recently updated about a month ago, but it's a minor tweak. But as you can imagine, over the last 50 years, regulations and requirements have evolved and changed, and a lot of these amendments are in different formats and different terms are used, which makes it difficult to kind of compare one to the other. And this map right here really helps show how a consolidated plan is going to help us, because just this one map alone shows us all the boundary changes that have occurred, when all the amendments occurred, and by color coding it, you can see some amendments did not have a boundary change and some did have a boundary change. So that's a simple diagram that's already become very helpful to us. The next diagram shows, and it'll be in the plan, what is being added to the, or proposed to be added to the Court Square urban renewal area through Amendment 12. and it's the two areas shaded in brown. The upper one is that northeast downtown district master plan area. We wanted to expand the urban renewal boundary to encompass most of what was, or all of what was in that master plan. The blast area, certainly a lot of qualifying properties up there because they're vacant, underutilized, et cetera. Made perfect sense as an urban renewal project area. And then on the lower part of the screen, that brown area actually extends the boundary out to Route 91 and incorporates, City Hall, Symphony Hall, but more importantly, some city-owned buildings across the street from Symphony Hall, between that and the highway, that are currently city-owned, and currently being used. But if at some point there are redevelopment opportunities here, this boundary expansion allows the redevelopment authority to help with any particular actions that may be desired by the city to reactivate or improve the activation of some of those buildings, especially the old church that's right on Court Square. Next. Also within all these amendments that took place over time, they had subsections within larger sections, as if it wasn't confusing enough at times. And we've also helped identify some of those subsections. And this map here shows that there will be two new subsections linked directly to the Northeast area and Tim's discussion of the Main Street Convention District activity area. So there are guidelines and policies and objectives for the whole plan area. And then there are some that are specific to sub areas because some areas have unique characteristics and we need to make sure we support and enhance.
Right, and this is, you'll see this is overlapping some of prior amendments. So some of this work and actually some of this area was already incorporated into the urban renewal plan. The plan, specifically Main Street Convention District, as you know, focus a lot within that whole zone. So we're not carving this out, but we're establishing additional guidelines and oversight, if you will, for that area to help ensure that plan that gets executed. So within as Jeff alluded to, there's activity areas specific to this amendment. We have two, again, in the upper area, that's the Northeast plan. So there'll be specific guidelines that guide both of these within Amendment 12. So
part of updating the plan includes bringing forward all the objectives that were approved in the past, as well as adding new objectives. And I'm not going to read all these, but what we found really rewarding was that the objectives of the original plan are still relevant and they're being brought forward. But basically, I'm sure, as you know, because you've been doing urban renewal in the city for a number of years, the main objectives are to really remove areas of blight and help with economic revitalization. Many times this will involve opportunities for higher density of development, and which would come from the private sector, but it also includes public realm improvements in the improved pedestrian environment, streets, circulation, etc. As I mentioned earlier, the controls that the redevelopment authority has to review projects and make sure that projects are in keeping with this larger vision, that objective is being brought forward. And again, with urban renewal plans in general, as well as some of the specific actions that a community can take, these public actions are all intended to encourage private development. That's what urban renewal is all about, economic development. Next. And we brought in some new objectives from those plans that Tim mentioned earlier, the master development plan for the downtown convention casino area, as well as some of the objectives from the Northeast District Master Plan. So those are being brought into this consolidated plan also. These objectives, in some cases, reference these particular sub-project areas. I'm trying to not get too much into minutia here. Some of them reflect objectives for the smaller areas, and some of them are objectives we want to see everywhere. And we've tried to make that very clear in the wording of these new objectives.
And I think one of the things that came out of the master development plan was really a focus on enhancing the pedestrian environment and kind of a cohesive approach to the ground floor, ground level, if you remember that discussion from a year ago. And so these objectives are, again, geared towards that. And you'll see that also in some of the guidelines that will be embodied in the document that really help guide development towards execution of that master plan.
So what we found in the preparing urban renewal plans is that the preparation of the plan itself, and also you already have two other plans, the master development plan and the Northeast District plan. The development of plans in and of themselves start to attract private investment. Developers, investors know what a community is expecting to see happen in a particular area. They understand the vision. There's more of a certainty of them to invest their money doing something in an area where they understand what the community wants, and what the developer wants to do is consistent with what the redevelopment authority wants to see happen. So development of plans in and of themselves starts to attract private interest. And if necessary, with the plan being developed, the redevelopment authority has the ability to help with certain projects that they feel are valuable by helping with acquisition of parcels if they're identified as such for potential acquisition, assembly of smaller parcels into larger parcels, which can become much more marketable redevelopment parcels. And especially in older downtowns like Springfield, there are already a lot of smaller parcels that it's sometimes difficult to redevelop those and get a return on investment. It allows the redevelopment authority to negotiate for the purchase of property. And I'll get into the nasty word of eminent domain in a little bit, but they can negotiate. It's not just eminent domain. They can sit at a table and start to pull together a deal if they would like to. And then also with the redevelopment authority working with the city, can pool their resources to help with the public realm improvements. Like Tim mentioned, certainly pedestrian circulation and pedestrian environment is important in all of these areas. But even if there were things such as sewer upgrades, roadway upgrades, things like that, the plan helps identify those. And so a community can start to identify funding to take care of those public realm and infrastructure improvements. Next. So within an urban renewal plan, each community is different, each need is different, and the actions that a redevelopment authority proposes to take place to advance economic investment and development is different for each community, but they tend to fall into these general categories of acquiring parcels and assembling them if necessary, infrastructure and street and traffic improvements, as we talked about, and all these other public realm improvements that can help it really show that the community is putting their money where their mouth is. They're willing to invest in their community in their areas, property that they own, and that helps reinforce to the developer that a community is serious about seeing investment in this area. The other thing a redevelopment authority can do is partner with property owners, organizations, et cetera, to help facilitate a deal. So it doesn't always need to be either the private on their own or the redevelopment authority on their own. Sometimes there can be a pooling of resources. One example was in another community, there were 5 or 6 property owners that had parcels adjacent to each other, adjacent to a city-owned parking lot. All the parties got together to determine how they could all work together and have a newer development on that bigger parcel of land if they all pooled in their parcels and their resources. Next. As I mentioned earlier, urban renewal plans do allow a redevelopment authority to acquire property. If there are parcels to be acquired, they have to be identified in the plan. That is vetted publicly so everybody knows what's being proposed. It's approved by the planning board, approved by city council, and approved by the redevelopment authority, all in public meetings. So it's all out there in the public, it's transparent. Not all properties identified for acquisition will actually be acquired. these are parcels that either have some immediate needs, or if an opportunity presents itself down the road, there might be a need to acquire a parcel in 10, 15 years from now. But it just gives the redevelopment authority to do that should the opportunity arise where their redevelopment authority involvement is necessary to help move a project along.
And I think to pause there for 1 second, that's where the master plans are very important, because they also help identify some of these areas that would help contribute priority sites, or lend themselves to the benefit of the plan. Again, a lot of these pieces are not necessarily acquisitions in the near term. It's just with a 20-year horizon, plus or minus, or actually a little bit more. It's important to, I think, give the SRA that tool if and when properties become available. Case in point, the foreclosed properties, as they're called, 113 State and Colonial Building on Main Street, as you know, were languishing for a long time, went into foreclosure. And that's when we're without the market responding, which they clearly weren't, there was an opportunity to add that and allow the SRA to purchase that. And now we're in the process of repositioning. So that's one of the key strategies, I think, behind this is to allow a long-term vision on some of these properties, not necessarily they're going to acquire them tomorrow, but if and when they become available, that the SRA has that tool.
The important thing to note here is that if the property isn't included on the list of potential acquisitions, that the SRA would then have to go back and modify the plan, get that approved by DHCD in order to consider the acquisition of that property. And typically the question comes back as to, well, why wasn't that considered when the planning was done, the underlying planning was done for the plan itself? So you have to make a case as to why you want to modify the plan to accommodate a new acquisition that you didn't account for, which is a time-consuming and process that's less than certain that you'll come out with an approval to amend.
Thank you. And the blast zone is a perfect example of that. Before the blast, conditions up in that area were much different. And after the blast, it certainly, there are parcels that certainly may need some assistance from the public sector to help redevelop them. As I mentioned earlier, just because they're identified for acquisition doesn't mean they'll be acquired. But if this redevelopment authority does want to acquire them, they have to get appraisals. And most redevelopment authorities these days try to negotiate an acquisition by offering a fair market value for the property. Eminent domain is only used as a last resort if negotiations fail. But again, the property owner is still offered fair market value for their property. And then on the other end,
Jeff, you might want to just add DHCD has got a requirement that you negotiate before you advance to eminent domain with the property owner.
Yeah, thank you. And also DHCD needs to approve any acquisitions too. So there's multiple layers here of checks and balances. If there are any occupants of a building or a parcel being acquired, they must be relocated at the expense of the redevelopment authority, so that there's no money out of pocket for any businesses or occupants that are being relocated if a parcel is acquired. So the policies really try to keep things fair. This is not intended to take advantage of anybody. It's intended to advance economic development without hurting anybody in the process. And then on the other end, once parcels are owned by the redevelopment authority, they can negotiate for the sale of those parcels too. They don't have to go through a public bidding process. They can negotiate a deal with a developer or another property owner who may want to acquire it. Just as they would try to negotiate for an acquisition, they can negotiate a sale. And there's all kinds of steps that they have to go through at that point too, as well as approval by the state. So it's a pretty transparent process, and a process that's very well defined so that people know what has to happen and everybody's treated consistently and fairly. So next steps. We are in the thick of it now, wrapping up the consolidation, getting input from a variety of of organizations, groups such as yours. Happy to hear any comments you may have. The SRA has also established what's called a CAC, a Citizens Advisory Committee, that we have met with, and they're, members of the community that are kind of providing this kind of outside look in at what's being proposed, to give us their thoughts, suggestions, ideas of what would work best for the community. We have met with them. We will continue to meet with them, and then some of them represent different neighborhood groups, and we'll be meeting with those the neighborhood groups also, which is what we call stakeholders. Once we get a draft in place that we're all comfortable with, it then has to go through a approval process. Starts with a public hearing in the city, then it goes to the planning board, and they have to review it to make sure it's consistent with other planning documents in the city, such as the two that Tim mentioned earlier. It then goes to city council for your review and approval. And finally, the SRA to say, yep, we're all good. It's going to go into the state. And finally, DHCD is the last one to review and approve it. And we and my firm and myself have done a number of these projects. We don't see any red flags here, but we do stay in communication with DHCD to make sure if they do have any concerns or questions, we try to address them ahead of time. So it's a smooth approval process all the way along. And then just so happens concurrently, the city is already looking at or acted on some zoning changes. Again, some prior actions of zoning changes that were part of previous approved amendments are being acted on now by the planning board. And there may be another one being queued up to go to the planning board also, to be consistent with master plans and the intent of what we want to see happen within this larger boundary area. So with that, I think we're all set and happy to answer any questions you may have.
I'll start if there's no objection. So is there any impact on the property owners being included in this? Until obviously at a time that you wanted to either acquire their property or needed to negotiate some changes or anything. So is there any impact on the property owners that will be included that are presently not a part of this?
So ultimately, the impact to them would be that their property exists within an urban renewal plan area. So, Councilor, if ultimately a number of properties were then bundled by a developer and they were purchased from the property owner, the developer then would have to comply with the development guidelines for the urban renewal plan area. But there is no specific impact on a property owner that exists within the area as it stands right now, except that any change in use ultimately has got to meet the set forth guidelines with regards to change in use.
Is the purpose of this informational, or is the expectation that the committee of the whole, I assume, will hear the same presentation, or is the purpose of this so that we wouldn't have such a need for such an elongated meeting?
The purpose of this is basically to give you notice that this is out there. My expectation would be that we probably are coming back to the subcommittee at least once, if not twice, to further review the document as it's finalized before it goes to the full council.
Okay, and finally, this has been sent to all councilors as well. Is a public document, correct? Or the
Yes. It's a public document. We certainly can forward to all the councilors. Amanda, I'm not sure that you've forwarded it to all of them yet.
I provided it to Kelly
Okay.
for the meeting.
I believe we've just been joined by Councilor Tim Allen. Councilor Letterman, do you have any questions?
No questions, Mr. Chairman. I'll look forward to continuing to review the progress by the SRA and their consultants.
Does any of our guests have any questions?
Melvin, I would just like to to say I would have been here at 1, but we had the pension bonds meeting every Wednesday at 1. So I just got off of that call. So I apologize for being late.
No apology needed. Just never apologize for working. Tim, this was sent out. I don't know if you've had a chance to review it, but it is a proposal to amend the urban renewal plan for the downtown area.
Yeah.
Essentially, it consolidates all of it. Did you have any particular questions for our guest at this point?
I do not. I saw it come. I saw the title of it, and I said, "Oh, I'll attend this tomorrow." And then I realized the pension meeting was at the same time. So, sorry. I'll look it over and send any questions along.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, I think the most important thing for the councilors to take away with regards to this plan is that it's providing cohesiveness to the entire plan area. Previous amendments that were done were mostly project-based. The objective of this amendment is to plan for the entire area as a united whole, as opposed to individualized pieces. As all of us understand, the geographic area is interrelated, and this plan actually reflects the goals and objectives as an interrelated whole, as opposed to disparate pieces. And I think that's the most important thing to take away. With that said, I think at our next discussion, now that we've taken you all through the weeds of urban renewal, I'd like to have us, highlight what the objectives are in terms of redevelopment for each of the areas that we're talking about, so that you have a handle on what exactly the plan's trying to bring about in these areas, as opposed to the logistics of the plan itself.
Tim, can you, Shan, obviously, what is the urgency in terms of the scheduling of the next meeting?
I think we probably need a couple of weeks anyhow to finalize a few things on our end. So a couple of weeks out would be ideal for us.
Amanda, it would be appropriate for you to just kind of reach out through the council or and let me know when you're ready for another meeting?
Of course, we appreciate it.
All right, thank you. I'll be as flexible as I can. Is there any other comments, questions from anyone? Any of our guests? Well, thank you, everyone. And I really appreciate you taking the time to share this information. Some of it's new, but it sounds like I don't believe you need any type of vote of the committee itself with a recommendation back to the committee of the whole. So I just thank you for your time and bid you well, Godspeed.
We appreciate all of your time as well. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you.
Very nice presentation. Second item I have, my childhood elementary school partner, Mr. Jablonski, and Mr. Donald Mitchell, which I've known for many years as a successful developer. And the floor is yours, gentlemen.
Okay, we sent some copies to, obviously it was a couple emails we sent to your subcommittee by way of Kelly. So you guys should have just kind of the outline that gives you some real details on the project. It's really just a project summary for the Build Back, the Springfield Build Back, the Build Back Committee grant program. But it just gives us really detailed context, which I can just jump into shortly. But we recently sent some elevation plans. So I'm hoping that maybe you, Councilor Edwards, or someone has the ability to just pull them up so we can talk through them. But really kind of the highlights of the project. We're in the process, so I'm in the process of purchasing the Kavanaugh building on State Street. We're going to develop that as a mixed-use building. We'll have about 10,000 square feet of commercial space, and the remaining space will be occupied by tenants, one-bedroom units. So we're going to bring some affordable housing units online, 25 of those. And in short, we're going to create some new jobs, allow an opportunity for new businesses to be present and like be in that space. We're going to bring a dilapidated vacant building back on the tax roll. And we are going to, at some point, be applying for some TIF support from the city once we get the project to a point where we can do that. But in short, we believe it's a great project. It does a lot of things that help stabilize the State Street corridor. More importantly, it helps stabilize that commercial district up there in the Maple High neighborhood area. So we're excited to talk more about it and just really open up any questions, because we are, as you all know, in the process of applying for a special permit. And that was the purpose really for us to be present here today, just to kind of northwind any other city councilors, answer any questions about the project. And it's our hope if we get to the meeting on the 25th, it's pretty much, it's a formality and everybody's in support of it and would support the project.
Tim, did you have any questions? Councilor Letterman, do you have any questions? You're muted.
Sorry, I was looking at the PDF. Mr. Mitchell, Mr. Jablonski, great to see you. Thank you for coming in. And I'm really excited about this proposal, because this is a building that, you know, has been vacant for many, many years. It is nearby my home. I used to have an office nearby. So I think you're going to have no opposition to wanting to get the building back online. Can you walk me through, I'm looking at the PDF you just sent, and I think I can actually put it up here. If you could walk me through the vision.
Yes.
Hang on a second. Let me try to find
All
it.
right. Got it. I'll put it to you. Yeah.
Can you guys all see this?
Yes, we can. That's awesome. So if you, whatever you stop. All right, so we'll start there. So that is our proposed site plan, which has 48 parking spaces. So there's an upper level and then there's a lower level that needs to be redeveloped. And so we're in partnership with the abutter, with this abutter here, who is, nope, the other abutter on this side, to the south side. Yep. Because he has some parking spaces in the lower level, not all of them. And so we thought it made sense for us to just incorporate him in this development project or this redevelopment project and basically provide parking for his residents. He has a 6-unit apartment building and there's a commercial storefront, which I imagine there's not much parking there now, but we wanted to clean up the whole site. We didn't want to just do our portion and then leave that portion, really in the condition it said. So he was in agreement. We're going to work out some arrangement where we'll share the maintenance costs for the lot, but the intention is to have 48 parking spots. I think it's 12 on the upper level and 36 on the lower level. And, we felt confident based by the strictest code that would certainly meet, the city requirement. If we have questions about that, I can actually just defer that to Steve. But what we did in our application process, which I don't think we clarified, but we have 25 residential units. All of them will be occupied by MHA participants in their program and their voucher program. And so I believe to date, there's 1 or 2 of them that have cars. So really there are no tenants that are going to have any, need to park in the lot, but certainly we have enough parking there to meet that need. And we felt that the 48 parking spaces also provided was a good number that we could live with, at least within that footprint, because we're right on the bus line and there is some off-street parking. So we felt that, and Steve can kind of talk to this a little bit. I think the strictest interpretation was like 59 spaces. But I think based on a couple of, based on those extenuating circumstances where, we don't have like 90% of the tenants don't have cars, and the current tenants in the building, we don't anticipate will take up that much parking throughout the week. We get a lot of walking or foot traffic. So we felt pretty confident that number, that number would be sufficient. But Steve, we want to just chime in and just give them some feedback on the parking situation.
Yeah, I'll be glad if anybody has any specific questions. There is a chart in the right-hand corner that's basically directly out of the zoning code. And so they have I believe it's one space for each one-bedroom apartment. That's the majority of the requirements, as Donald just explained, because these are all on-call reserved for the Mental Health Association tenants. We've checked with them, and very few of those clients and potential tenants own cars who will be looking to park them on site. The rest of the development, when we go through the other plans, we'll show you, but just in summary, there's a small amount of retail, which includes some food vendors on the first floor, a flea market in the basement, and then the majority of the first floor and second floor are going to be these one-bedroom apartments. And wrapping it up on the first floor, the Mental Health Association is going to have their main offices, and that's 5,000 square feet, and that's included in the chart as per the zoning code. The requirements are included. So the summary is that we come up 11 short with the strictest interpretation, but because we're near the bus line and off-street parking, there's metered parking in the area. And also Donald can confirm that it's my understanding that the flea market is only going to be open on the weekends, when the Mental Health Association will not be having regular office hours. So the two don't overlap as much. So we feel that this is adequate parking for the way the building's being redeveloped.
Do you have the commercial space already tenanted, or are you going to be seeking tenants for the commercial?
Yes, good question, Councilman. So we do. So right now there's about 90% of the space that's already committed. So we've got about 1,000 square feet that's uncommitted at this point, but the rest of the space is. And if you flip through, well, I guess before we do that, is there any questions regarding the site plan?
Tim? Tim.
My question is just trying to acclimate myself to kind of the shape of it. It looks like there's minimal frontage. I won't say minimal, but a smaller degree of frontage on State Street, and it seems to go back pretty deep. Am I reading that right?
Yes, you are. Yep, exactly.
And, okay, go ahead.
Yeah, no, you go ahead.
So in this, I can picture Kavanaugh's furniture, and that kind of makes sense to me. I've never walked along the side of the building, but obviously it goes back a ways. And the combination of functions that you would have in there would be 25 one-bedroom apartments, the mental health offices, MHA offices, as well as some retail. Am I hearing that right?
You are, and it's not it's MHA, but it's not their offices. So MHA has a program, and so they have a program within the MHA umbrella that will occupy space there. But yeah, it is about 5,000 square feet, and it's not a lot of staff or personnel in the building. And that clientele that they're going to be serving typically gets dropped off there because they have day service program by many of their vans, and then they pick them up. So there just won't be a lot of staff there. Again, there won't be a lot of parking requirements for the staff that run that MHA day program. And also, Counselor, there'll be 3 food vendors. There'll be an ice cream shop. There'll be a taco food retailer, and then there'll be another small cafe in there that does breakfast and lunch.
Okay, that sounds good. Are those, not trying to put you on the spot, but are those things that you've already worked out with who you expect these people will be?
Yes. Yep. So we've got those 3 committed right now. And again, we've got about 1,000 square feet that's uncommitted. Like we've got some ideas, but at this point, nothing really firm. But those are the 3 firm tenants. And then on the lower level, in the building, we're going to also have a indoor flea market on weekends. So those are the 4 tenants that are locked in.
So going back to, all right, that's good. So when you say lower level, would that be the basement?
Yes, correct.
Okay. So the main floor that you would have walked into in the furniture showroom, that's where the old furniture showroom, that would have been where the taco place and the ice cream would be.
Yep. And when we go to the next slide, it'll probably give us it'll show us. See, that's the lower level. So if we look quickly here, there'll be 4 residential units in the basement in the back of the building. And then in that area that I believe you were just in, Councilman Lettleman, that'll just be open space. That'll be where the flea market will operate on weekends only.
Okay. Is there any, going back to when my life about 40 years ago, I was doing a couple different flea markets and weekend sales kind of things on some family property. And there was, limit on how many times you could do it a year. And now I know we have these, flea market places like the one at the corner of St. James and Carew. Is there any permitting issues with you doing that in that space?
To date, we haven't ran into any permitting issues. I mean, I would say in the next couple of weeks, like that will come up as we start talking about signage and then just really nailing down some additional, some detailed planning that we need to make sure like we're within code and that there's no issues. But to date, we haven't got any feedback that says we can't do it.
Okay, fair enough. And the MHA that you're referring to is the Mental Health Association from
Correct.
Worthington Street?
Yes.
Yep, okay.
Yep.
All right, I'm all set for now, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Mr. Chairman, just a couple of quick ones.
Sure.
Just full transparency, I have to leave at 2 o'clock, so I'll have to stop sharing my screen at 2, but you can certainly continue the meeting. The two quick things I have for Mr. Mitchell was number one, you mentioned that you'll be coming forward for a TIF, which is fine, but I just want to make sure you were aware as you're making your construction plans down the line that we do have an ordinance on the books in Springfield in the last several years that Councilor Edwards and Councilor Ramos and myself had put together, which is a TIF ordinance that requires anybody who receives a TIF to comply with the city's responsible employer ordinance rules, which speak to residency, diversity, hiring, things like that. And Councilor Edwards can talk more about that with you because he chairs that committee. And then the other, I just wanted you to be aware of that, so it's not a surprise. And then the other piece is, Melvin, is this in your neighborhood technically? This is your neighborhood council?
Technically, yes. It's yes. Donald had came to us before looking for it, but it's on the border. So essentially, between three actually, because it's close enough to be part of McKnight. It's also close enough to be part of Aqua. But the original interest in the area by Mr. Mitchell was for the gun block, and the gun block is considered part of my Maple High Six Corners. This property abuts that. And so we, a couple of years pre-COVID, Mr. Mitchell came to the neighborhood council and was given a letter of support for his plans for the gun block. And I believe this is the newest version of his goal to renovate that section of State Street. And the neighborhood council for Maple High Six Corners, I believe, may have already sent a letter of support for the project. And if they haven't, I believe that they will be willing to do so.
Okay. Yeah, those are my only final questions, but I'll look forward to hearing more. And I'll also say I learned something new about Councilor Allen's professional background every year.
There's a few journal entries you haven't yet heard about.
I look forward to them. One time I was sitting with Councilor Allen working on an ordinance, and he goes, 20 years ago, I owned a 15 bed and breakfast. And I was like, what? What are you talking about? Well, anyway, so that was enjoyable for me. Thank you guys so much.
All right.
He probably owned 40 acres and a mule about 40 years ago too. But is there anything else you'd like to share with us?
I'm happy to just, if we could go to, not the next slide, because I just want to give you guys a sense of what I don't know if we want to just talk about the exterior elevation, because I think this is pretty self-explanatory, because maybe that may generate some more questions. If we can go to the next slide.
Well, I'm just going to simply say, Councilor Letterman is going to have to leave very shortly.
Okay.
And the real issue or question then becomes, when he leaves, I do not have, Tim is not, are you a member of this committee?
I don't believe I am.
Yeah, I believe when Tim leaves, we don't have any ability to vote as a recommendation to the committee of the whole. Councilor Letterman, you have, how about I just put my glasses on so I can see what time it is?
7 minutes.
Okay, go ahead. You should be good for at least 5 more minutes, correct, Councilor Letterman?
You're correct. I will say, I mean, we really can't vote a recommendation on the special permit because we have to vote on the special permit based on the hearing. So, I mean, we might not even need to take a vote.
That's what I was trying to get clarity of because we would lose quorum or a voting quorum at once, but that solves that problem. So Tim, you have your hand up.
Oh, I didn't mean to. That's left over. I'll take it down.
All right. Well, Donald, go ahead and we'll continue.
Yeah, so if we just go to the next slide, I'll just talk briefly around the exterior of the building. So if you look at the top elevation, that just gives us a sense of what we're proposing for the front. So, you know, there are two businesses that'll be front facing State Street. We plan on remodeling the front, and the exterior will look much like these pictures. And I know this isn't a great diagram because we sent it electronically and we have a printed version that looks much better. But just to give you guys a sense of what it'll look like, the lower portion of the building will just be black and the topper portion will be like a off-white. And that'll kind of just follow itself throughout the building. Once we get to the south side of the building, we anticipate having some awnings, some decorative awnings over each window and over the two entrances to the south side of the building. In the middle portion, you'll have this elevator shaft and like a new area that we're going to just build up. So there could be some continuation from the top second floor all the way throughout the back. And, you know, that will be hardy plank. And again, it doesn't really represent what it looks like, but we just wanted to give you some visual of the proposed changes that we're going to make, you know, to really change this building from, you know, the condition it's in now to like, you know, one of the most catching developments on State Street.
Okay, thank you. As far as the REO is concerned, I'm going to ask Chase Wan, who actually is a part of the procurement department, and to reach out to you, Donald, just to go over some expectations of what the REO committee would be looking, especially if you're going to be looking for a TIF. It's better to have a clear vision of what's going on. And it's not overly burdensome. You already, you know, your man colors is and your resident, so you should have no problems with that.
Okay.
Are there any other questions on this issue?
No more questions. I'm all set.
Thank you both.
Donald, Steve, it's always been a pleasure to work with you both. I wish you success, and I'm sure we'll hear from you shortly as we move forward.
Okay, looking forward to seeing you all on the 25th.
Yes, and we'll talk soon. Thank you both.
Right. Thanks, guys. Have a great day.
Okay.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you.
Yep.
Jesse, you can take this down. Okay, there we go. And I believe we have one. Well, it's is Greg still here?
Looks like Greg is gone, actually.
Okay, then I don't think we have any other business. He had, I believe it was Greg, discussion of economic development, how it pertains to recovery projects. I believe that was Greg Ellaby's presentation, or I guess, and if he's not here, Tim, looks like you're enjoying the beautiful sunshine.
I'm out on my deck. It's nice out, huh?
Melvin, I got one person trying to come in the room. It says Eric. I don't know if that's Greg. Before it said Greg Ellerby.
All right, I clicked it. Let's see who he is. If it's not appropriate, we'll kick it out and end it anyway. Eric, can you identify yourself?
They're connecting to audio now.
Eric.
Hello, how are you?
Good. Can you, Greg?
Yes, I had my tablet battery went out.
Okay, well, you have the floor. Just be aware that Council Letterman will be leaving shortly, but you do have the floor. I believe your issue was a discussion of economic development and how it pertains to recovery projects, correct?
Yes, sir. And I'll thank you for allowing me to join this meeting. And also, how are you doing today, Councilman Letterman?
I'm well, Mr. Elby. I apologize that I have a 2 o'clock for work that I can't really push, so I will have to log off at 2. But you and I also talk frequently, so I'm certainly available to you.
I'll see you again. I'll see you again. I just want to just discuss the possible. I'm going to put forth an issue for certain projects such as workforce housing in the Old Hill neighborhood. I understand that they have a grant out pertaining to the city matching funds with, to go into partnership with a local nonprofit to develop houses on, if I'm not mistaken, Mill Street or Union Street. And we've also put in for that grant with the Minority Contractors Association, and we're looking to see different avenues on how to purchase these city lots. That's one of our major things, and also get some construction job for minority contractors, be it LGBTQ, women, etc. So, and also minority contractors. So that's our push, and also to bring in fresh foods and organic products to food desert areas. So those are issues that we're looking to work for, and we're looking to get your support on these topics.
I can speak. I believe you mentioned the vacant properties along Union Street. There was an RFP that went out for several properties recently. I don't think that it's been made public, but I believe those have been awarded to a developer. They had they put out an RFP. There were several entities, I believe, at least 3 different entities, Home City, Wayfinders, and one other. I can't think exactly who it is. Matter of fact, I could probably pull it up. Hold on. Let's see. That would be under who? Well, actually, I believe that one of at least 3 entities have already been awarded the contract for those lots along Union Street. Last month, City Council approved the transfer of property that was controlled by the Springfield Redevelopment Authority for development, or I don't believe those have been awarded to a contract, but we've approved the transfer of the land from the SRA to the city, and then the city will put out another RFP. Those RFPs are competitive. So the thing is when they are advertised, your organization or the membership of your organization then are afforded an opportunity to bid on them as a bidder. The bidding is more than just the cheapest price. The bidding is based, or the awards are based on, of course, price, but also ability to complete the scope of work is under consideration. Past performance would be of consideration. So essentially it comes down to the difference between an RFP versus a auction. Whereas with an auction, it goes to the highest price. With an RFP, we consider the price that is bid, but we also consider ability to complete the project, past performance, expectations, and then we can also consider other factors, which is local person of color, all those types of things. And but the main scope thing is this is always going to come back to qualified and expectation of being able to complete the project.
So because I've been to the Office of Housing several times, and I don't want to say whose name I spoke with or whatever over the World Wide Web, but I was under the impression that this funding that the city was going for these 11 properties, they couldn't make the decision yet because the grant was due on, the RFP was due on the 7th, and they put it out in like a week's time because they just found out about some funding through Mass Housing. So, and then I guess the grant got extended through Mass Housing. So now they're not gonna put it in until the 27th. And they said that they will make the announcement until about the end of June or like mid-June. I know that they had already made the choices for the developers as yet.
I can't speak to it. I may not be speaking correctly. Then the thing is I'm sharing what I think I know, but not what I have before me to be able to answer the question for. So if somebody told you that, then I can't refute it. I may be talking about different parcel of land, or they could have could have put out the RFP for the developers to bid prior to securing the funding for the project to go forward. I know that they have changed a little bit of the plan that, from what I understand, for example, I mean, the Maple Street row houses, for example, in the apartment building, there has been a lot of discussion about developers who are bidding for these properties biting off more than they can chew.
Right.
And they don't have this, the past scope of work or history, but they were qualified to win the bid. And then, so what the city is trying to do now is to hire an architect to do the design work ahead of time, so that when developers come, it limits or lowers the scope of what they expectation from them. They just have to be able to show that they can build it as opposed to having to design it. And so I can't speak, I guess I shouldn't try to speak for specific parcels. So, because I'm not directly, I don't know. And that's the best I can say in regards to that.
All right. Yeah, that's basically my question online. So I'll probably get up with you sometime in the near future.
Are we still meeting supposedly at 3 today?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I'll be there, and we can talk further privately if you like.
Okay, sounds like a personal plan.
Okay, anything else?
No, thank you. Not online. No. I'm sorry I didn't say hi, Mr. Allen. How are you doing today, Counselor?
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing well.
Nice to meet you.
I've met you a million times, Tim.
I don't know your name. No, it says Eric. Is that your name?
No, my name's Greg Ellerby.
Greg Ellerby. All right, thank you. I heard the name Greg before, but I saw Eric, so I was a little mixed up. So nice to see you again.
Always a pleasure, gentlemen. Always a pleasure.
There you go.
There we go.
All right.
Well, thank
Great.
you, everybody. Tim,
All right,
appreciate your time,
guys.
Greg.
Okay.
All right,
And I'll
I'll
see you.
soon.
All right. Thanks. Take care.
Yep, you got it.
Greg,
Good
I'll
luck.
see you around
Good luck.
3 o'clock.
Bye bye.
Okay, thank you, everybody.